Welcome back to another great episode of the Adam Talks podcast.
I started out as a wrestler, 10 years Olympic style. So I started when I was about 9 or so.
We said we don't want Bruce Wayne to be old and that's his reason for retiring. He has to have a reason to not be doing this.
I knew I'd always wanted to do it. I never saw myself at a desk job, and anytime I thought of something else, it always brought me back to wrestling.
Man, I don't like fancy pad work. I like realistic pad work. Am I formed? Am I punching correctly? Am I balanced? Like, a lot of them guys will hold pads way outside their faces, and it's just, I don't believe in that type of training, man. Like,
for a couple promotions, I wrestled under a mask, and we don't talk about those days. Because those days were fun and really embarrassing.
It is the first annual Berryville Film Festival. I'm the founder and festival director for it. So it's exciting to bring something to a small town, something brand new.
I think anything you do in wrestling has to have meaning to it. No matter, like, facial expressions, the high-flying moves, all that stuff like that.
We're back with another one. This is going to be a great one right now. We have a guy who's a professional wrestler here in the state of Arkansas, the one, the only, Adam Shepard. How's it going, man?
It is going well, Adam. Nice to be on here with another Adam. I already feel like we're very familiar.
Definitely. Well, we know each other from our history, training, and whatnot. So definitely something that I think I was there for one of your first training sessions in the Aztec Warrior Wrestling thing. Am I right?
You were there the very first time when I met the trainer at Aztec Warrior Training. Yeah, you were. I met you, and I met Jeremy Lewis.
Yeah. Yes. Man, it's awesome to have you on here. Why don't you just let us know a little bit about how you got into wrestling? Where did it all start for you, man?
So, I was thinking about that leading up to this because I knew that was going to be a question. I knew we were going to talk about where this started. I feel like wrestling's always been around my family. I kind of feel like it grew up as a part of our casual family life. My grandpa would talk about how he knew wrestlers back in Michigan, and he used to grew up around wrestling. And my mom had stories about meeting Gorgeous George when she was growing up, and going to those very early wrestling shows. Yeah, and just being around those kind of wrestlers. So it kind of felt like it was always in our family, around us. But that was just something I grew up watching. So then I didn't really think it was something that I could do. So coming back to it, it's been very, very cool to be able to be a part of it.
Who are some of the inspirations for you that really hooked you into wrestling and know, hey, this is something that I would love to try to do?
Oh, man. So, obviously I grew up watching, like, Hulk Hogan a little bit, and John Cena and Edge, but what really inspired me to start training to be a wrestler was when Edge made his first return, because I had grown up watching this person, and I was like, man, he is back, he's doing this, you've always wanted to do this, like, why not try it? And we were all locked down because of the pandemic, and I was like, man, you gotta get out there and do this. If he's back living his dream, and you could see it on his face that he was loving it, you got to go out there and be part of it. You're never going to be able to stand it if you don't try.
Definitely, man. Definitely. Was it like a real quick thing, or did you try some backyard stuff before coming into the professional scene? Did you do any backyard stuff? Because for me, as you know, I was a backyard wrestler for quite a while before I started. Was there anything like that for you?
So that was honestly in the back of my head growing up, like from that early exposure. We'd wrestle as kids, wrestle in our yards, but then once we got to be teenagers and got hooked into sports, we'd get busy. So when I got into college and started being exposed to wrestling again, there was this, we got to build a ring at our house. We got to do this. And I kind of just never had the kick to do it until that, hey, let's start training. And that's kind of where everything got jump-started.
I got you. Definitely, man. What was your first training session like for you? What was it like for you?
So, I've told a couple people about this, and it's very, very corny. I don't know if you've ever watched the first Harry Potter movie. The scene where he gets the wand and, like, everything lights up. That's really how I felt the first time. I spent about 20 minutes sitting on the sidelines watching everyone roll, because I started training in California. So I watched a class of about 20 people do their rolls, do their bumps, and get ready and get stretched out. And I was sitting there like, man, this is really cool. I don't really know how well I'm going to be able to do this, but I want to give it a shot just so I can get in there and say, hey, I gave it a shot. That's really fun. And then you walk up the stairs, you touch the ropes, and they tell you got to wipe your feet off. You got to respect that ring. You wipe your feet off, and then you come through the ropes. And I remember turning around and just being like, man, this is where I have to be. This is just like, something just felt right.
Yeah.
It felt like it clicked into place.
Yeah, man. Like, for me, seeing it was just like, it was one of those moments. The first time I ever went over there, I think 2018 or something. First time I ever went over to the Aztec Warrior training facility. The first time I ever did, and he had the ring set up in the backyard and everything, and I was just like, "Whoa, this is wild, man!" Because growing up from like '97, watching DDP fight the Macho Man, and watching Hulk Hogan and Sting in their feud, and Rey Mysterio and Eddie Guerrero, and all the way up to like Batista and Triple H and John Cena and JBL and all of those good rivalries. I never thought that I would be able to even, let alone be next to a ring, get into a ring and do this kind of thing. So for me, it was like, whoa, it was almost like a froze up moment. Was it similar like that for you, or was it like, no, I got to get in there now?
So there was that very initial, like, man, I can't believe. So you get in there and you start moving around, and it kind of makes you think differently about stuff you saw growing up. You're like, man, these people, like, first of all, everybody who I watched, all those people you named, they had to start in the same place that we started. And that was kind of like a ton of bricks being dropped in my head. Because it's like, man, that's crazy. And so to think that they all have kind of come through this, it's kind of inspiring, makes you feel like you have a chance to do it too.
Definitely, man. I know from my own. Let me ask you this: have you ever felt like whenever you were first training, before you ever had a match or anything, did you ever have the feeling like, oh, we need to be doing stuff. I need to be doing something more than just this? Because I know for me personally, I wasn't like Antonio Reyes, our trainer, the guy that trained us and stuff. He was teaching the fundamentals, and I was at the first. I was like, well, I want to learn something else. I want to learn how to do a neck breaker or whatever. I was in a rush to get to bigger moves. Do you feel like you were ever like that whenever you were training?
So I feel like I definitely still have those moments. I call it the wrestling ghost. Takes over when you're wrestling and you get up on the top rope and you're thinking elbow, and all of a sudden you're like, no, I can do a 450 splash. I'm like, no, man, walk it back. So like when you're training, that stuff happens too, because you're doing your arm bars and you're rolling around and you're doing your mat wrestling, and then you kind of have these flashes like, man, I want to give this guy a rock bottom. Or like, man, I want to give this guy an F5. Cool. And I feel like that's a healthy part of the progression, but I don't know. I feel like I really wanted to focus as much as I could on being as fundamentally sound as I could, just to be the best block of clay that I could be, so that I could mold into whatever I wanted to do going forward.
Definitely, man. And you've came a long way from those early days. I mean, not only stuff we're going to talk about here in a little bit, but just watching your progression from seeing how you've grown as a wrestler in ring is just awesome, man. What is some of the stuff you've learned coming forward from your earlier days actually wrestling to current day? What's some of the stuff that's really important that people may not think about that you've learned?
So one of the biggest pieces of advice that I try to give to anybody new that we're working with is just being patient with yourself, which of course that's something that every Little League coach is going to tell you, and every supportive friend is going to tell you, be patient with yourself. But being patient with yourself as far as like trusting the process that's going to get you to where you need to go. Whether that is trusting that that what you're doing matters, that you are getting better, whether or not you always see that you are. And just kind of, I noticed when I started, I would do a lot of stuff when I would train, and then as I would progress, I wouldn't feel like I knew how to show people that I could do this stuff. So I feel like a big portion of this kind of feels like my second year of wrestling. A big portion of this last year has been me just trying to prove that I can do the things I already know I can do. So I guess the advice would be just be comfortable doing the things you know you can do.
Right. Like, don't overextend yourself. Don't try to do stuff that maybe you don't know as well, that you've learned once or twice, but you're not great at. Perfect the stuff you're already good at, right?
Well, and have a big enough bag, like have as big of a bag as you can so that you don't use everything you have every single time, so that when you're kind of feeling like, oh man, I need to do a little more, you don't have to reach for something that you've never tried. It's just something that you haven't tried in a while. And I think that's what a lot of these older wrestlers, whenever they get us and they tell us, oh, you got to have this variety of moves you do and this big list of things, and it seems real daunting. And I think that's all they're really saying, is that you just want to be comfortable doing a lot of different kinds of stuff, if you can.
Definitely, man. Take us back to the very first Adam Shepard match. What are you thinking going into that match, man?
So it was real surreal because, like I said, when I first started training, you get in the ring and you're doing your training, and like when I started training, so my fiance says I was not 300 pounds. I feel like I was at least 300 pounds because a lot of the beginning training was just blow-ups. It was running and throwing up in a trash can. Like, people would go outside and throw up because you'd get so sick. And a lot of people gave up. Like, and I would see people come in after I started, and I'd be like, oh, cool, new people, and we'd be running along together, and then you'd see them fall, and you're like, come on, man, let's go. So a lot of it was just that progression, and then now fast forward, and you're getting ready to go through the curtain, and you picked out music, and you picked out gear to wear, and you're just like, man, I never thought I would really get from there all the way to here. So I guess that's kind of that surreal moment, but then before you know it, you're like, man, I gotta go out there and fight this guy. He's trying to beat me up. So I gotta go out there and think about that. And there was just a lot of, like, you get out there and everyone says it's so much different in front of a crowd, and as much as it is a lot like your training if you're training well, it's very different with a crowd. Because you go out there with a focus of what you want to do, and then people are out there and they're cheering for you sometimes, or they have a sign up or something, and it just totally blows your mind, because before you know it, you're right back to when you were a little kid and you're watching wrestling. You're like, man, I'm making memories for these fans. But you're pulling yourself out of that match because now you got to go wrestle that match. So I feel like a lot of that was going through my mind all at once as I'm walking up there. Yeah.
Man, who were you facing off against in your first match?
Oh man, so I want to say we're calling him Steve Mule now. Cousin Steve Mule.
Okay. What was that? What kind of? Okay. In that match, what was some of the things? I know for me, everything's a learning experience, so you can't really look back with regrets. But what's some of the things that you've learned moving forward from that match? Like, what are some of the things that you know you did wrong that you're like, I could have done this better, I could have done this better?
So, like, I think that a big focus was I spent a lot of time focusing too much on trying to make everything look good. Which, as much as that doesn't sound like it makes sense, maybe you understand what I'm saying? Because I go back and watch that, and I'll find myself being like, man, why are you moving so weird? Why are you being so careful? Why are you being so, not precise, but precise in a bad way? Where you're just being so, like, just like you're handling glass. And you're like, man, you're fighting. Like, there should be an element of aggression. There should be an element of just rumble and tumble sometimes. And I was so focused on, we're both training in the same place, so we have to prove that our training is paying off. And that involves doing things the correct way. That maybe when something went awry, I would just get away. And there were so many times I'm like, man, why didn't you just stay in there and try to, like, fend for yourself a little bit?
I understand that, man. My and Jeremy Lewis's first match was against each other, and I know for my side, I'm not sure about Glenn's side, Jeremy's side, but my side, for my part, I wanted to go out there and be like, all right, we learned all of these things from Antonio. Let's go and show him we can do them. Let's do it right. All right,
Just
you know,
do it right.
and it came out and yeah, came out and we got done. We were like, that was awesome. That was great. And then I went back and watched the match after like my second or third match, and I was like, what was I doing? It was the slowest paced match, and it was literally chain after chain after chain. It was just grappling 90% of the match. I was like, come on, man. You got to throw some punches or do something.
Yeah, that's the Rumble Tumble.
Looking,
yeah.
yeah. Moving forward, man, you've done all kinds of things. Like you said, you've been in it 2 years now. What has your overall experience been in SCW as far as your overall experience there? What's that been like for you?
So it's been a really good experience. I've talked to some of the wrestlers about it now that we're all working together. I remember my first SCW show coming from California to Arkansas, coming to a show, and being just super happy to like reestablish that I wanted to do this, and getting there, and you see the wrestlers, you see the people that are the pillars, that are the mainstays of the promotion, so you say. And now,
yeah,
2 years in, I've got to rub elbows with a lot of those people that I met, and I was like, man, those are the people I want to get to be anywhere near someday, and I'm already really getting to be in there and making a name for myself, and it feels good.
Yeah, man. One day we could see Adam Shepard facing off against SCW champion, whoever, for the championship. I know right now it's Ray Stryker, but we could see Adam Shepard going after that big gold belt in the SCW, man. I have a feeling about it. You know,
the way I see it,
I think it'd be really cool to see that.
I had a title match with William Blackwell, and that match never even finished because Ray Stryker came back out. So that match could still be going, for all I care. I mean, I'm happy to have a rematch.
It's going right now.
Yeah, it could be going right now. All we need is a referee.
I hear that. I hear that, man.
SCW show this weekend, so who knows what's going to happen?
Right? I know recently I've been seeing something going on in SCW, but before I get into that, tell me about your history with Kyle Love, man.
I knew this was going to come up. Man, okay. So Kyle Love and we go, I wouldn't say way back because I met him once I got to Arkansas. So I met him and he started training with us, and he became my tag team partner because we had a lot of the same inspirations in wrestling. We grew up watching all the same wrestlers. We have a lot of the same goals. And he was a little younger, so I thought, hey, man, I want to show him, like, help him avoid some of the mistakes I made at the beginning. And so I feel like we've been having some success. We've been doing tag team stuff. We've been traveling, getting out there, getting the Heartbreakers name out across Arkansas. We've wrestled in Texas. We're trying to make our way out into Missouri.
Wow.
Mississippi. Yeah, we're really getting out there. I couldn't be more blessed, really, with what we're doing. But then,
that's awesome, man.
Months, he's really kind of been mixing up with this whole talent agency bit that's going on at SCW. And I don't really know what to say. It's kind of starting to spill over onto me now, because he was getting involved in some matches, and now the guy he kind of got involved in this dude's match a couple times. This dude's picking a fight. He wants to fight me now. So now, this weekend,
dang, man.
and I mean, you know, I was the one who, the way I see it, I was the one who brought Kyle into wrestling, and I wanted to show him the ropes, and maybe somewhere along the way, I was not close enough eye or something, I don't know. But if this is really, if Sebastian Envy has been wronged by Kyle and feels like I need to pay for that, then I guess that's just what we're going to have to do. I'm going to have to go in there and take Kyle's punishment, I guess, and try to reason with this guy and tell him that Kyle's not really a bad guy. He's just a little misguided.
Yeah, so you and Kyle are still good then, though, right? He's just kind of gone off on a.
I think he's kind of lost his way a little bit. He's getting frustrated early on. We did just regain our tag team championships at Haybarn Championship Wrestling. So that's what I'm saying. Like, things are going
Woo!
So things are good. Things are
right
good.
On, man.
But I mean, maybe it's that we haven't really gotten to showcase tag team wrestling at SCW because there aren't a whole lot of other tag teams there. So maybe he feels like that part isn't getting as much of a spotlight. So he feels like he needs to look for that spotlight other places.
Yeah. There's not a tag division at SCW. You got the cruiserweight and the heavyweight division, and that's it. And that's not a bad thing or a knock. That's just what it is.
Yeah. And I think that's something a lot of fans have talked to me and said, hey, you guys should do some tag team wrestling. I have made the case that they could just have belts made, give them to us, call it good, no problems. They told me that wasn't really something they could do. So here we are.
You could just bring your own tag team championships. Just make them out of cardboard, man.
Man, that seems
right, SCW tag champions.
I could do it. I could just make some belts.
There you go. Make them titles. Carry them out with you. All right, so you're going up against Sebastian Envy. Man, that guy is the strong style cinephile, man. How are you preparing for that match?
So, I am preparing for it. I have been reviewing a lot of his matches. He is certainly a strong competitor. I'm not going to take it lightly at all. He made some comments about how he was looking to make his way into the heavyweight division with a win over me, which, while I appreciate that he still looks at me as a heavyweight, I have really been trying to slim my way down to be more contendable with the cruiserweights and the heavyweights. So that being said, I feel like we're going to match up very evenly. I know that I'm going to have a fight on my hands, but that being said, I hope he doesn't expect that it's going to be an easy match for him, because while I know that Kyle may not have done the right things to him to get us to where we are, that doesn't mean that I'm just going to roll over and let him step all over me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the best you can hope for, apart from the obvious a win, is that Kyle will be there for you as a partner, not as someone that's going to interfere in the match or do anything crazy like that, you know. Just someone that's there to support you, you know, because like you said, right now he's kind of gone astray a little bit. So the best you can hope for is that your partner's there for you, you know.
I don't know if you saw the match he had with Jeremy. He just wrestled Jeremy Lewis. Kyle Love did last month. So
yeah,
when he came out to the ring, if you go back and watch the rewind, he goes over to the commentary table while people are cheering for us, and Carl hands him a pair of pliers, and I had to wrestle those away from him. I don't know what he was going to do with them, but I don't like that. I don't like that he's thinking about that kind of stuff. I don't like that those are the thoughts going through his head. So I do see, I do see the stuff that Sebastian's talking about. I do see that he's going astray with the talent agency. And maybe that's part of my hopes with I agreed to this match, obviously. Sebastian asked for it, but I agreed to it because I want Kyle to see a contending match. Whether I go out there and win or lose, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to fight a fair match. I'm not going to cheat. Yeah. I'm not going to do something that I would regret, that makes me feel like I'm not doing those people justice. And that's all we can really do.
Definitely, man. Definitely. I know you got a lot of fan support, man. What's it like feeling that rush? Because I know when I was in SCW, I was loved. I was a good guy. And whenever I went to the IWF, not so much. I turned a corner in the IWF, but in the SCW, I was cheered for it, and it was a rush like I have never felt, man. What is it like for you going out there and seeing these fans with Adam Shepard signs, wanting high fives, waiting for you to autograph their stuff, man? What's that like for you?
It's, to be honest, it still doesn't feel like it's always really happening. I kind of keep feeling like I'm just going to wake up and I'm still going to be training and doing my roles in wrestling class, because you go out there and they're playing a song and people are, like last time I go out there and then people are holding signs up. I went out there with Kyle to manage for him, and people had signs up with our names on it. And like, man, people like, they really
Wow.
feel respected and like your hard work is paying off. And it makes me think back to when I would go to shows and I would cheer for my favorite wrestlers. And it's kind of mind-boggling to think that they're coming to these shows and cheering for us. So I actually had a similar experience. I also went to IWF, and the fans were not a huge fan of me there. I don't know. Maybe it was I was wrestling. I don't know. Fans seem to like Jeremy Lewis some places. So they were not a huge fan of me.
They love him in the IWF. I know they love him in the IWF. I know that he beat me last at Comic-Con this year. He beat me for my IWF championship. And as far as I know, he is still the champion, because I heard there was a little bit of a kerfuffle at the end of y'all's match.
He beat me the next day. He beat me the next day for the IWF championship as well. So Jeremy Lewis is getting high on the hog. As far as I know, he is still the champion. I don't know if they've had any shows since then. I have not really kept up with social media a whole lot. It's been a whirlwind of a summer and fall. But
I understand that, man.
Chasing this talent agency thing. I went out, Kyle asked me to meet him.
I understand that.
Out there, he has Troy. He has Troy out in my ring, and I'm like, man, what are you doing?
I saw that. I saw that. Man, I saw that. I was so like, what is going on? I saw that. I was like, what is going on, man? Like, what is happening? Because, I mean, my first thought was, what is happening? You know, you got the Heartbreakers, the most dynamic tag team in South Central Wrestling, and the Haybarn Championship Wrestling Tag Team Champions. And one of them is fully relying on his partner to be there for him like a partner should. And the other one's like, I'm going to talk to these guys over here who are known to be some scoundrels. And I'm going to go ahead and bring one of them over here. You know? I was thinking, what was going through your head when you saw that, man? When you saw him there?
Well, honestly, at first I was kind of worried that the last time I was mixed up with the talent agency was the William Blackwell match. So I was kind of worried that maybe it was about to become a scuffle of some case. I didn't know if there were more talent agency members afoot. Kyle claims that it was just training, that he was just training with Troy Twain, and that's cool. I mean, honestly, if we would have talked about it ahead of time, I wouldn't even have minded. Like, I'm sure that, like, Troy's a great wrestler. He has a lot of potential. He's just also mixed up with Carl and talent agency.
Yeah. Troy Twain's the only two-time Cruiserweight champion and current Vapors Championship Wrestling Heavyweight champion. Troy, 2 belts at the moment.
I saw that. 2 times.
Man,
only 2-time Cruiserweight champion.
Yeah, man. He's got a lot going on for him, but like you said, he's mixed up in a bad group of people, you know. I remember the last show I went to when I did I brought my gear there and I did my podcast at a South Central Wrestling show last year, I think earlier this year. And I got to do interviews with several different people. And I went to talk to Drayshawn Prince at one point, and Troy Twain was next to him. They had merch tables next to each other, and they don't like each other. And I don't guess I realized that. But I was talking, and I was like, y'all are 2 of my favorite wrestlers in South Central Wrestling. And Drayshawn, I guess, left. I don't remember exactly, but Troy was like, no, you tell me I am your favorite wrestler. Say it. And he, like, made me say he was my favorite wrestler. That is That is forcing someone to do something. That is not
Under duress.
professional or cool in any way.
That is not a
Yeah, man.
champion.
Put me under duress.
Man.
No, man. We could see Adam Shepard be the cruiserweight champion at some point. I mean, Tyler Knight is facing off with Troy Twain, I think, what, Saturday?
That is true. They're wrestling this Saturday, and you could see Tyler Knight pick up that cruiserweight championship. Anything can happen
I
in
mean,
wrestling these days.
anything could happen, man. Now, I know as well as you do, there are people that call themselves professional wrestlers but have not had any formal training. Have you had to deal with any of those people?
So, I mean, I feel like wrestling is such a diverse sport that you're going to come across various levels of training regardless of where you go. So I feel like I've tried as best I can to stay humble about where I'm come from, what I'm doing, and where I want to go. And I feel like I've come across people that I don't feel like might be as well trained as I am, but I've also come across people where I'm sure they thought that I was not as well trained as they are. So that's kind of been the perspective
Yeah.
I think about. It's for all they know, for all I know, they could think that about me. But yes, I mean, yes, I sort of have. I mean, you could say I have.
I'm not saying anything negative about the people in general because I've worked
Of
with
course. Of course.
one person. I've worked with one person, nicest dude in the world, but no training. It didn't seem like at all. And let me give you a little hint. This guy is the guy that I won the Intercontinental Championship from. So that may tell you something, a little clue as to who it could be if you know the same person. It may have possibly even had a match with him with someone else. Anyways, it was very difficult for me whenever I had that match with him. It was frustrating. Have you ever had any frustrating situations in matches where maybe you come up with a game plan or something and they just don't follow it at all?
So I feel like I wouldn't
I mean, I
exactly
think you
say
might know who
that
I'm talking
particular.
about.
I feel like that I wouldn't say exactly that particular frustration, but anytime when I see that I'm going to wrestle someone, I try, especially if it's a big match or a big opponent, I try to do a little research and maybe watch a match or two of theirs. And so I'll feel like I have an idea of what I'm getting myself into. And there's nothing worse than you think you have an idea. It's like, say, you think that a project's going to be this big, and you go to bring your tools to start it, and then you open it up, and you're like, oh man, this is a whole big thing. And maybe
I thought I was fixing a lawnmower and you're making me fix a semi-truck.
well, yeah, and it's like kind of maybe you thought you were just putting a coat of paint on something, but really you're replacing a whole bunch of siding on your house, maybe. Because you're like, oh man, that was just cardboard. That wasn't really plywood, mate, for all you know. And then you're in for a much bigger problem than you bargained for. That's happened a couple times where I've gotten in there with someone and been like, oh man, you're not the wrestler I thought you were. But I guarantee that somewhere in the 2 years I've been wrestling, there are wrestlers that have gotten in the ring and been like, oh man, this guy is not the wrestler that I thought he was. So it really can go any way.
Right.
I feel like
Yeah.
the more I try to be confident about what I'm doing, the more likely that's going to happen. Starting out being very reserved and very held back about what I can do, everyone consistently says, oh, you're doing so great. You got to be more confident. You got to be more out there. And then you start being more out there. And after a while, people are like, oh, you're too out there. You got to pull that back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I think that the whole experience, and you've had tons more matches than I have, obviously. So has Jeremy Lewis. I've had 7 total matches, but in those 7 matches, I feel like I've got to live a dream that I've had since I was a child. Would you say you
So let
felt
me ask
something very similar to that?
Yes. I was going to say, let me ask you before you ask another question. Have you kept track of the matches that you have wrestled? Do you have a journal where you write down, on September 26th, I wrestled Jeremy Lewis at SCW?
I don't know the dates, but or in some cases I don't know the events. I know 3 SCW Fight Night events I wrestled at. It was Jeremy Lewis, the first one. The second one was Mitch Black. The third one was Diesel Dog. And then the fourth one, you, me, and Kyle Love tagged up at Van Buren at the Opera House
A
and for
3-on-2
IWF
tag team.
against
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, against Jordan Faithful and Sean Prime, and we lost, which makes no logical sense.
Yeah.
But after that, it was the first go around at Comic Con, and it was me against Motown Mayhem, and then after that, it was me against Jeremy Lewis for my last two matches.
See, you seem like, and I think it's the podcaster in you. You have that editorial brain, so maybe you keep track of them a lot better. You have that filing cabinet in your brain, and that's really cool. I wasn't trying to say that's how you should do it. I don't have the events for a lot of mine. So just for say, I don't have on this date I wrestled this person, but I do try to keep track of the names because at first I thought,
Yeah,
oh, well, that's not going to matter. I'm only going to wrestle once or twice, and then that'll be the end of that. Or I'll wrestle once and I'll sprain my ankle because I'm real fat and I can't do it, and then that'll be the end of that. But now here we are, and I'm finding myself having to go back, and I'm like, man, because I've gotten a lot of advice from listening to other wrestlers. One of the best things I think about the past 4 to 5 years of wrestling is wrestlers being open on podcasts, just like we're doing right now. Talking about their experiences, talking about
definitely,
the
man.
journey that got them here. And one of the things a lot of them have talked about
Yeah,
is that they keep track of their matches. Chris Jericho talks about he has a book of all his matches, and I thought, man, I got to go back and do that. So my fiance and she does all the hard work here. She does all the hard work involved in the Adam Shepard Enterprises. She has been keeping diligent track of all of my matches.
she
One
is the
of the
leader
many
of the
things.
Heartbreakers.
She really is. She's really the leader of the team.
She makes your gear. She helps you out. She writes down your matches. She does it all. Sarah's the
She
best.
does. She is the killer. She crushes it. And I really, honestly, I don't think I'd be doing this if it wasn't for her, because I remember coming to her, I remember sitting there watching that Royal Rumble and be like, man, I really want to do this. And you know how many thousands of women have told their husbands, or wives have told their husbands, or husbands have told their wives, no, you probably shouldn't do that, that's crazy, don't do that, that's insane. But she was like, no, let's do this,
Yeah,
that's really cool, I support you.
definitely, man. Definitely. And it's the same for me. You know, my wife, Lindsay, I wouldn't be able to do any of the stuff that I do without her because she's my rock. She's the support that I didn't know that I needed or that I've never really had before as far as a partner or somebody who's there all the time with you. Never really had that before, but since I've been with her, she's been like, "You can do this. You got this," you know. And
Yeah,
if my health wasn't the best, she would be like, "Well, maybe you shouldn't do this one. Maybe you should hold off on this, get your health in check." Or, like I'm doing right now, she was really one of the people that helped me to see, hey, you need to step back, take a little bit of a break, and get your health in check because I was having a lot of trouble breathing throughout my last two matches that I've had. So
and
I
that's
don't.
always
I
the
need to
most
get
important.
do what?
And your health has to come first, of course. And
Absolutely, absolutely. Man, as far as what you've learned from the beginning to now, from the beginning of your journey as a wrestler to current day, man, what are some of the biggest things that you've really had to learn, or some advice you would give to people? I know you've already said be patient with yourself, give grace to yourself, but what are some other things that you possibly have picked up on that would be really beneficial to some young wrestlers that may be listening right now?
so always be willing to try new things. So don't take my earlier advice of, oh, learn all your stuff and don't ever go overboard as don't try new things. Like, always be willing to try new things, but at the same time be comfortable with everything you're doing before you try to do it in front of people. I think would be one thing. Um a little bit more beginning in the very early stages. So a lot of the basic stuff, like I really had trouble with some of my things that required me to be light or agile because I was real out of shape when I started this. And I really find myself going back and looking and realizing that, man, I made a lot of excuses for why I couldn't do stuff at the beginning. I made a lot of excuses for why stuff wasn't working. And whether that was in training to my peers or whether that was just in my own head to myself, all it really did was it slowed me down. And it's easy to say that now. But it's just, if you can hear this now and take that and go, hey man, this guy that's doing this is saying it, like, just whenever you, like, say someone tries to suplex someone, you lose your footing and you fall down. Don't get up and go, oh man, this and that, and I should have tried more. Just think to yourself, I'll do it better next time. We're all human. We've all made mistakes. And then just try to do it better next time. And don't beat yourself up along the way. Like, I really have gotten myself into this habit of beating myself up when I make a real big mistake. And I think it's because I hold myself to a real high standard, which I think is good, but I think that it really gets in my way sometimes.
I can understand that, man. I can understand that. You know, a lot of the times you see a lot of people that'll talk about their matches and talk about how they get frustrated, or how, you know, like you were just saying, beat yourself up, or there's a lot of anxiety at times in matches or in performance or whatever. Have you ever had moments of maybe not so much depression, but super high anxiety where you're like, ugh? And if so, man, how do you deal with that kind of stuff?
So I think that, I'm not sure whether it's anxiety all the time. I think for me, sometimes my anxiety can get construed with adrenaline also, because before you go out there, you're feeling this, like, your blood starts to boil, and you start to think about all these things, and all your training kicks in, and you got to do this, and you got to do your footing, and you got to be careful, and you got to be safe, and you got to do all these things. So I feel like that's where a lot of wrestlers talk about having a pre-match routine, whether it's just going and doing some breathing exercises or going and doing some sit-ups. And I know that it seems silly, but it's just stuff to take your mind away from that adrenaline thing. Because a lot of the time, once you get out there, if you push that energy out into the room, you can really fill that space and try to start to connect with the audience. And I think that's something I've been trying to do more, is because a lot of the anxiety, it brings you right down in here, and you get all, like, focused, and you're looking at the person across from you, and you're really dead eye with them. But when you kind of start to fill the room and think about the people, look around at the shirts everyone's wearing, look at the signs they're wearing. It sounds corny, but, like, listen to the songs, maybe kind of just see how many people are in the audience, see if you have familiar faces, just things that familiarize yourself with the room and get you more comfortable. And before you know it, that anxiety starts to kind of flow away.
Okay. Man, I know for me, I've had moments where I'm like, I think it was the second match with Mitch Black. I went and I talked to Antonio. He wanted to review the match with me because there were some spots that were like, okay, it was teaching moments, but at times I wasn't taking it as teaching moments, you know. It was, for me, in my head, it wasn't like that in reality, but in my head it was, you didn't do this right, you didn't do this right, you didn't do this right, you know. So yeah. I've had to work myself out of that kind of a feeling a couple different times in the past, and Lindsay just walked by back there. She goes, anyways, I've had to walk myself out of that and find my way out of that hole that I was in. And it's sometimes a deeper hole than others, you know, where you doubt yourself and you doubt your own ability, and you doubt what you can and can't do. Yeah. Have you had those kinds of moments as well?
I do, and that's one of the things I said about, like, just kind of trusting that you can do the stuff you know you can do. And I think that's, I didn't want to get long-winded with giving advice, but one of those pieces of advice would be, people call it be coachable, but it really goes down to when people are giving you feedback, try to start to take it, like I've had to try to start to take it as, this person's not beating your ass because they want you to feel bad. They don't want you to watch because I've watched matches back 2 years later and been like, man, like you said, what the heck was I doing? And they don't want you to think that. Yeah. They want you to make those steps now. And I think that really that's all they're doing, because I'm at the point now where kids are coming to me and saying, what did you think of my match? People are bringing me footage of matches and saying, will you watch this and tell me what you thought of my match? And I'm realizing, because at first I started, you don't want to be too critical. You don't want to pull things apart too much because you remember what that was like. But then you start to realize you're kind of doing them a disservice if you don't point out stuff that they can fix. And yeah, coaches are not always the best at throwing softballs. They tend to throw fastballs because they're trying to toughen you up. I think that a big part of this is coaches trying to toughen you up for the worst scenarios. Toughening you up for that guy, that booker that's going to come, you're going to come back and he's going to be like, what did you just do out there? Because it'll happen. You'll go out there thinking you had a great time, come back and they'll go, man, that was trash. And they don't want you to just go, what? Oh my God. And I think that it's part of that.
Yeah.
So just getting comfortable accepting that no match is ever going to be perfect. You should always want every match to be perfect. You should want everything you do to be as good as it can be, but accept that it's always going to be a journey.
It's like a lot of people have said, be a sponge, be able to soak up the information and don't take it personal. Like I think that's kind of what you're saying. Don't take it personal. You want to be a sponge so you can absorb the information they give you.
It's hard not to take it personal because it's personal criticism. A lot of the time it's, hey, I don't like how your body looks when you're doing this thing. And that's very, very personal. That's my person. Or they'll tell you, hey, I don't like how you look. Hey, I don't like that you do this thing. And you're like, well, I really want to do this thing. And I feel like it's part of that. It's just, well, I'd rather you tell me that now than me do it for 5 years, and then people say, man, we've never really liked that you did that thing. We just didn't want to hurt your feelings. Like, I'd much rather have someone tell me that now.
Yeah, man, definitely. Getting off of the heavy a little bit, man. Everybody has their Mount Rushmore of professional wrestling. Who is on your Mount Rushmore and why?
So are we trying to sully the question a little? Are we talking current wrestlers or old wrestlers who are not wrestling or total?
All time, man. All time.
God dang it. I'm trying to make it easier on myself. Man, that's hard. I don't know if anyone told you, but they added like 8 more faces to Mount Rushmore, so I technically can name 12 wrestlers, I think. No. I'm not gonna fool around.
This is new. This is new to American history. Breaking news: Mount Rushmore gets 8 more faces.
They make new history books every year, man. They make new books every year.
And with AI, anything's possible.
Yeah, exactly. If I really had to pick 4 wrestlers, man, that's so hard. I know it's not in any order either, but just because I think that one of the biggest things we're trying to do in wrestling is make people feel something. We're trying to go out there and make people, whether it's make you love me or make you just want to beat me up. And so as I start to learn, I try to think back to what wrestlers really made you feel stuff. And so there are wrestlers that are very great wrestlers that I never got to see. And so it's hard for me to put them on that mountain knowing they should be there, but I never really got to see them that much. And that's kind of like my cop-out for a lot of my more modern wrestling answers. I would say, yeah, come on. I can't name 2000s on wrestlers and then them say, this guy's not a real wrestler. He didn't put Roddy Piper on there. I love Roddy Piper. But my experience with Roddy Piper live was him on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Because I missed all of this early wrestling because I didn't have television growing up as a kid. My only experience was as a kid. I used to watch...
You ain't alone, man.
I used to watch reruns of Monday Night Raw, and that was how I would see wrestling. So I was always watching, like, current wrestling a week after it was happening, and that's how I grew up watching wrestling. So I missed a lot of the great, great early stuff. The wrestlers that really kind of grew who I am as a wrestler, who I want to be in the ring, I think John Cena's obviously in there, because I feel like what he set out to do in wrestling was always leave people feeling fulfilled. And a lot of his target audience was younger kids, because kids tend to get behind that big superhero character. But he made you believe that he could do anything. Whether it was lifting 2 of the biggest dudes in wrestling, or any things he did, coming back after his huge injury. Like, he really made you believe stuff. Even now, I think back, like, man, he was cool.
Yeah.
Eddie Guerrero. I think going back as an adult and watching Eddie Guerrero, I have so much more of an appreciation for Eddie Guerrero than I ever did as a kid. Because I thought he was really cool as a kid. I thought the cars were really cool, and his gear was cool, and all of his like movements were cool. But I didn't really understand all of the little micro expressions and the little footwork things and character things that he was doing that really brought so much more to everything around him.
Definitely, man. Definitely.
There's wrestlers that I want to include on this list, but I know it's so absurd, so I have to pass them by. I feel like the next one I would have to include was that?
I didn't say anything, man.
Oh no, okay, sorry. I thought you were trying to talk. I feel like Rick Rude is really in there, and I know that I didn't watch him live, but I went back and watched a lot of his stuff as I was starting to get into wrestling, and he really knew how to make people not like him. He really knew how to get under people's skin and get a reaction. And I feel like a lot of the modern wrestlers that you see that are doing real good villain work are kind of trying to tap into that. How do I really make someone like me? Not just going in there and choking people or hitting people with, like, thumbtack steel chairs or whatever. It's how do I really make this guy want to follow me out to the parking lot and fight me after the show? And I feel like that's something Rick Rude did. You talk about, like, Ric Flair. I think Ric Flair would probably be on that Mount Rushmore as well. I think Ric Flair, he has... one of the first experiences I had with wrestling in high school was reading his biography. And man, that was like my first peek behind the curtain of what wrestling really was. Because I remember being a freshman in high school and reading this Ric Flair to be the man. And just hearing him talk about just absurd stories about wrestling, about what it really was growing up, what it was coming up through those times. And he was there for all of it.
Yeah. Man, as far as, I understand what you mean about Eddie Guerrero, because I started watching WrestleMania 21 the other night. It's my favorite WrestleMania. It's the first one I ever watched, and it is an awesome WrestleMania. I watched Eddie Guerrero versus Rey Mysterio in that match. When I was a kid, it was Eddie and Rey at Halloween Havoc. You know, that was the gold standard of Eddie and Rey matches. But I think WrestleMania 21 comes pretty dang close, man. They did some stuff in that match, and as a wrestler now, I'm like, wow, how did they do that? Whoa. And it's not just how they did it, it's just how smooth and effortlessly they made the moves look. Like, it's like, whatever, I can do this. And it's like it didn't even faze them how easy it was for them to do it. Second nature, you know. But not only that, like you said, the micro expressions on Eddie's face, seeing the looks on Ray's face after like a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker he got done to him. I mean, everything. It was just wild, man. And seeing it as a wrestler now is so much different than watching it as a fan whenever you're 15 years old or something.
Oh yeah.
It's way, way different, man. But yeah, man, some deep cuts. You pulled a Rick Rude out there. I didn't expect that one at all, but you ain't wrong, man. He knew how to make people hate him, man. A lot like The Miz, whenever The Miz is doing his heel shtick. Everybody hates The Miz when he's a bad guy. And I think he takes a lot from... Go ahead.
No, that's what I was going to say. So The Miz was the idea that came to my head. Because he's someone I grew up with. He was the quintessential, you just want to punch this dude and stuff him in a locker heel. And I feel like as a wrestler now, analyzing his work, that he took a lot of inspiration from heels like Rick Rude. And so that caused me to go back and watch Rick Rude, and it made me really appreciate him a lot, because I saw, you start to watch old wrestling and you see, man, so many wrestlers now clearly learned a lot from these guys. And he's one that I can tell a lot of
Definitely.
people from.
Oh yeah, man. Oh yeah. What makes in your opinion, what makes the best babyface and heel?
I think that as far as being a good face, I think that you have to be someone that people want to see you succeed. They have to want to see you win more than anything else. They have to want to see you do whatever it is you're set out to do. And they have to believe that you can do that. And those two things have to cross somewhere. If they just really want you to succeed, but they don't really believe you can, then they're going to kind of be bummed out. Or if they really believe you can, but they don't really want you to, that also kind of like it evens out. That's where you start to get some of the, we don't really like this baby face, but we can tell he's supposed to be the baby face, and it kind of starts to make the audience not know what to do. So I think the counter for what makes a good heel would be, we don't want you to succeed, and here's why. And them just kind of, whether it's you slipping and falling, or you getting pie-faced with a pie in a scene, or you getting thrown out a window, or whatever it might be. Even just getting a punch in the face. They just kind of want to see you get your comeuppance, because they know that you deserve what you're getting. It's not just, this guy's getting hit with a chair because he's a mean guy. It's, he has done things that have made people go, oh yeah, I would hit that guy with a chair. Like, we all have a coworker, maybe, or someone we've seen in the supermarket, and you're like, oh man, I really just want to give this guy, like, a suplex. Because there's something about him that you just can't put into words. And I think that kind of stuff, that's what makes your good heel. Like, you just have to relate to them.
Okay, definitely, man. Well, I got one more question before we start wrapping up, and that is, what are your thoughts on the all right. So I'm not talking about a bad guy transitioning to a good guy or a good guy transitioning to a bad guy. I'm talking about a tweener. What are your thoughts on tweeners? People that are not good nor bad, they're just kind of there. Because we've seen those in wrestling several times.
I don't want to say that I don't want to say it's bad, but personally, I feel like you kind of answered your own question by saying they're just there. Because they're kind of muddying the water. Like, they're making it harder for the bad guy to get boos, because say you have like a group like the NWO, who they're doing stuff that you would argue is bad stuff, but they're doing it to people that no one likes. So how are you going to cheer for them to put one guy through a table, but then boo someone else doing it to someone else? Like, where are the rules? And it starts to kind of like make it a lot harder for you as a babyface to then, well, I don't want to cheat. I don't want to hit somebody with a chair, but that seems to be what these guys want to see. I don't know. I feel like it kind of makes everyone's job harder.
A lot harder, yeah.
I don't know. I know that's not the right answer, because I know that some wrestlers I know, if they see this, they're gonna go, he doesn't like my wrestling. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm saying. It's just it's very, one of the hardest things to be in wrestling is authentic. It's hard to just be authentically, whether it's you yourself, or, because they say that the best character should just be you turned up. Whether it's that, whether it's you authentically being you, or whether it's you authentically being a guy in a clown suit, or a guy in a unicorn outfit, or whatever it might be. But you being authentic, you giving it everything you can. And I think that middle ground step is just people who aren't really comfortable being authentic. So they want to be able to stand on one dock, but then if it doesn't go their way, step over back and forth. And it's really, I understand that, but it's just, you're never going to really know what you can do until you just try.
It's about committing, man. It's about committing to one or the other and figuring out who you are, you know.
Yeah.
Whether it is your character, or whether it is your actual personality dialed up to 10, or whether it's just you wanting to be something you're not, which is what the bad guy Adam Gregory is for me. It's just me wanting to channel that feeling that you talked about. You want to just punch somebody in the face at the supermarket because they have a weird face and you don't like them, or they smile too much, or whatever it might be. You know, it's that feeling inside that I don't ever show because I'm a really, I mean, and this is not being one way or another. This is showing my humbleness now. I'm a really nice guy. No, but I'm a nice guy. For the most part, I'm a nice guy. You know what I mean?
I think
And my personality dialed up to 10 would be what you saw in SCW, my first three matches. But I feel like whether it's one or the other, you got to commit to whatever it is. And if you're not able to commit, that's where you get those tweeners, and they're just there. They're just there. I mean, what else could you say about them, really?
well, and I think that they have
But
good intentions because I think they want to give the audience a good show too, but it's just they're afraid to
yeah,
really commit to being themselves.
yeah, definitely, man. Well, shoot, man, I don't want to hold you up too much longer. It's starting to get a little bit later in the evening, and we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. The way I usually do this is much like the podcaster you were watching prior to getting on the show. I do so. I kind of stole from them a little bit and made my own sort of variation on it. I'm super grateful for a lot of different things, and at the end of the show, I like to say three things I'm grateful for, and then allow my guests to do the same. For me, the things that I'm grateful for don't really change that often or that much. For one, it's my support system, my two beautiful daughters, Lily and Bella, my beautiful wife, Lindsay, my family, my friends there, anybody who's really been there for me to help, push me to that next level, whether it's podcasting, wrestling, making music, making movies, whatever it may be that I'm doing. They help to get me to wherever I'm at by supporting me. So number one is my support system. Number two is, well, you guys, the guys and gals that choose to come on my show. Because, Adam, if I'm being honest, man, you don't have to come on here. You didn't have to be on this show, man. I'm just some dude that likes talking to people. So I'm super, super grateful that you and everybody else who's been on my show would choose to come on my show. You know what I mean? It's a really super. It's a thing that I'm very grateful for because, like I said, I'm just some dude that likes talking to people. So for me to be able to talk to pro wrestlers, actors, musicians, whatever, it's a super big deal to me. So super grateful for that. And the third thing I'm grateful for, it's a twofer: my health and the good Lord above. Because without God, nothing is possible, and with him, everything is possible. And my health, although I had an accident a couple weeks prior to this recording, my health is getting better daily, and that's all you can ever ask for. So, Adam Shepard, in this moment, what are three things you are grateful for?
Man, I think that you really hit support system right on the head. I think that I couldn't be more grateful for the support system that I've had, whether it be from the trainers that I've found along the way that got me started and were so patient with me through my journey. Well, one of the first people that I ever trained with, Joey Chaos from Santino Bros. So when I wasn't really able
Oh,
to
wow, that's cool.
well, hold on. So when I wasn't really able to go down a whole lot and do physical in-person stuff, I went down and watched some of the stuff they did, and I did a bunch of virtual stuff, like psychology stuff, character work online, because he was trying to get into the online presence. And I was just so stoked
Yeah,
to be into wrestling, and it was during the pandemic. I was like, yeah, of course I'll be a part of this. And so when that ended, he was like, hey, you guys should come down and train. And I just couldn't really line up times. My work schedule was really inconsistent, and I was still in that beginning phase where I just wasn't really ready to take that step and just quit a job for wrestling yet, maybe. So I was trying to make
yeah,
my two lives fit together. I was trying to be Peter Parker and Spider-Man simultaneously, and you can't really do it. You got to pick who you really are. And where he could have let me go, he could have said, hey man, I appreciate you trying. It's not working. See you later. He found a trainer closer to where I was, and he gave me that guy's info. And he didn't need to do that. And my wrestling journey could have stopped right there. if he hadn't done that. And so I can't thank him enough. I've taken opportunities when I met him at one point. He came up to Fresno and I trained and had a master seminar with him. And I thanked him and said, man, I couldn't thank you enough for bringing me to this point. And then getting to Arkansas, being able to find trainers there that supported me, being able to find wrestlers that were willing to be patient with me while I learned. I touched on it earlier. Sarah is an incredible support system. She has been so helpful in keeping my head above water while I do this. So just support. Like you said, you can't do anything without support. Second, man, that was a long one. Sorry. Second, I'm really grateful for the opportunities that I've had in life because, especially coming from the path that I started at when I was young, like, didn't have an amazing home life. I was not super affluent growing up. A lot of people with a similar home life do not grow up to be professional wrestlers. And even before that, I was able to go do musical theater and performing in other facets before I even started wrestling. So I've been able to perform a lot in my life, and I'm just so thankful that I've been able to have these opportunities because I don't necessarily feel like I deserve them. A lot of people have tried very hard at things and they've not been able to do them, and I'm so grateful every day that I have the opportunities that I have. I think the third one, I'm grateful for the future because as long as the earth is spinning, we have new days to try new things. We have more opportunities to fix things that we didn't do the way we wanted to do yesterday. And we have opportunities, whether it be to go on a new podcast, because you say that I didn't need to go on this podcast. I mean, I had a great time on your podcast. You didn't need to offer it to me. Like, I loved being here. It was a great time, man, talking wrestling. I'm grateful for what the future holds. I'm grateful that you have the opportunity to do this podcast, and I want to see what the future holds for it. I want to see even more wrestlers come on your podcast.
Definitely, man. 3 things definitely worth being grateful for, Adam. Man, if people were looking you up on social media, where could they find you?
So I have a Facebook, and I will send you a link. Either whether this video goes up, I will tag it the comments or what have you, or I'll get it to you beforehand. I have an Instagram. I do not really use it that much because I'm not a photos person, but as I'm starting to not hate the way I look all the time as much, I'm starting to feel like I could be a posting pictures person, I guess. I don't really know. I definitely don't do the TikTok. I probably should because I know it's clips and videos, and that's a real big wrestling push thing. But I'm spending so much time trying to physically learn more in the ring that I'm not able to spend nearly as much time doing the promotional stuff to grow me as I should, and I want to be better about that. I think that's my biggest project going forward, is get better at marketing myself, whether that be even just telling people what I'm up to, telling people where I'm wrestling, telling people, because I was real good about that when I started, but the more busy I got, the less I actually did it.
Okay. Well, right on, man. Hey, man, I really appreciate you coming on the show, man.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Definitely, man. I hope to see you sometime soon in the ring at SCW. Watch some more of your matches, and I hope for nothing but the best for you, man. But I'm going to go ahead and get off of here. I'll let you get back to your life, as everyone has, and you have a great rest of your night.
You have a great rest of your night, too. Thank you so much.
Come join the fun.